outside of the space that the experience happened in.
Gotcha. And in what ways did your time in PEEP influence how your ideas about experiential education?
Well, it certainly made me ask a lot of questions. I would say that I did not ever get a clear answer on what experiential education was or was meant to be while I was in PEEP. In fact, I may have come away more confused than I was when I started. And also, it's a little bit hard to answer the question because now I'm in an education course that like heavily is about what experiential education is. And in fact, I think your advising professor like wrote one of the articles I read like a week ago.
Oh, funny. Yes.
Yeah. So it's like a little bit hard to distinguish the two parts of my life. I think that what Pardes did for me as far as understanding experiential education, I think was its critiques of experiential education were really strong in that it doesn't have to be a surface level learning opportunity, that there is space for really deep learning, deep text learning, deep learning of Jewish practice, Jewish ritual, halakha, can all happen in a space that's experiential, and that we don't need to actually shy away from those things, that they're actually integral to the Jewish experiential environment. And I think probably, whether or not I had a better definition of what experiential education was, I think I had a much better understanding of the possibilities of what it can be.
Okay. And now you're taking an education course that's like specifically about experiential education?
It's primarily focused on that.
Gotcha. Okay. Could you, if you have your sheet of paper and pen handy, I'd like to ask you to draw a representation of your experience at Pardes.
Okay.
I know it's a little bit of a difficult question. It could be, like, I'm a terrible artist, so it could be, like...
Yeah, I'm a terrible artist.
It could be word-based. It could be, like, like a box. Like, it could be anything. It doesn't have to, like, look good. Just, like, a simple sketch. And you can take... I'm going to ask you to do it while we're on the phone, so, like, take your time to think about it if you need.
Okay. I went to art school. I feel like this should be easier, but they don't teach the poetry-focused kids how to draw, so...
Well, you could write. You could use words.
Okay. This is very hard to see, I think, but...
I can see something.
Excellent.
Can you explain it to me?
This person. I would say that my experience at Pardes was a lot about building blocks, and kind of figuring out all of the pieces of both, like, Jewish learning and Jewish educating. Yes.
And what do you think some of those building blocks are?
I think one of them is text. I think one of them is Jewish time. I think one of them is relationship building, relational Judaism. One of them, I think, is related community. I think God and prayer. And then I think inheritance is a huge one for me from Pardes. I would say like that's the one that I feel like I'm standing on top of in my church, is the inheritance and a sense of ownership over all of the other blocks that in various ways they all belong to me as an educator and as a learner.
Mm-hmm. And what exactly do you mean by inheritance?
I think I see like Jewish history as like a long chain of, like, I'm super into the Lador Vador idea that Jewish history is a chain of tradition that gets passed on. And I think for a lot of my Jewish life, I felt like I had access to some links in that chain and not all of them. And I think that one of the biggest things I learned from PEEP is that I actually have access to the whole chain, and that I can choose which pieces I want to access at a different time, but that all of them are part of my inheritance as a member of the Jewish people, and all of them are part of what I have to offer to the generation after me as part of their inheritance.
What do you think, you've like touched on this a little bit before, but what do you think are some of the most influential parts of PEEP?
I would say the faculty, again, both within and without the actual PEEP program. My PEEP experience also had some students who were not from North America, and I think that cohort of kind of an expansive network of people really looking deeply at the field of experiential Jewish education was incredibly valuable. And then I would say the other major thing for me was the Beit Midrash, and having time and access to Jewish texts. I think that I didn't necessarily get all the answers from PEEP, but I certainly learned where to look and how to look for them.
What do you think were some of the less influential pieces?
I would say that I didn't necessarily find the PEEP specific courses so broadening. I think they were pretty surface level for me. And I think the relationship between, I think, PEEP and the director of PEEP was not so great for me.
Like on a personal level, or?
I think that my cohort, because Judy was leaving, I think that there was a sense that we were kind of on the back burner. And so as far as our professional development being kind of shepherded in any way by her or by, well, I mean, she was really the only person. We did have a mentor who was awesome, and she should go in my very influential box. But I think with the actual administration of the program, they were very much focused on their PEP students and very much not focused on us. And so I would say like that didn't necessarily have a negative impact on me, but it certainly didn't have a positive impact on me. And I would say my cohort did not